Welcome, everyone, to the second Wood Services and Social Innovation Symposium. This symposium is focused on employee engagement. I am Nikolai, and I'm the Education Platform and Social Media Manager at the Social Innovation Journal. We are very proud to partner with Wood Services on this symposium, as well as their new book, Thriving Through Transformation, which I will discuss momentarily. I will start by giving a brief welcome so we can get right to this amazing panel of speakers. Today's session is moderated by Tine Hansen-Turton, CEO of Wood Services. The series of symposiums is sponsored by Wood System of Care's book, Thriving Through Transformation. If you haven't already given this phenomenal book a read, we encourage you to do so. The book is available for free as a PDF, or a physical edition can be purchased. The QR code on screen will take you to an Amazon page, but don't worry if you haven't scanned it in time, as I will post the link in the chat once I've concluded. We have 2 more symposiums upcoming in the Thriving Through Transformation series. The next one's on March, titled Integrated and Complex Care for Special Populations, and we will conclude the series with our final symposium in April, titled Strategies for Avoiding the Cliff at 21, Models for Education, Behavioral, and Family Supports. To give some context about the journal was founded in 2009 and has been publishing for just under 14 years. The mission of the journal is to serve as a bridge between the world of practitioners and academics. We publish 6 editions annually. Themes range from education to social mobility, and we usually partner with global content leaders on their particular issue. Through that process, we curate these editions. We are now expanding the Social Innovation Awards to New Jersey and Baltimore. The New Jersey Social Innovation Awards has just concluded their voting process, and the winners will be announced next week via the virtual awards ceremony. The virtual awards ceremony is free for all and a great way to hear from social innovators and change makers in New Jersey. Stay tuned for more information about the Baltimore Innovation Awards as the official launch is happening in the coming weeks. Last, we are always interested in articles for the journal, as we view ourselves as an open access journal. We are peer-reviewed and indexed. We are always looking for new themes to invite you to write. With that, I would like to turn it back to Tine, CEO of Wood Services and co-founder of the Social Innovations Journal. Tine, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Nikolai, and hopefully you can all hear me. Welcome, everyone. I'm happy again to welcome all of you to this symposium on employee engagement, which is a big topic for many of us in the health and human services field and beyond. And this is, as Nikolai said, the second of a series of 4 symposiums that will be held throughout April. Just a little bit of background about Wood Services. We focus on individuals with intellectual disability, autism, behavioral, and mental health challenges. However, the themes that are highlighted throughout the book are really applicable to any organization in the health and human services sector and beyond. Now, knowing that finding and keeping the most qualified and caring employees is really a critical mission for all of us, I think we can say that's the same for many providers in the health and human services sector. And we know that we are deep into a crisis of not only the direct care workforce, but also other professionals, including nurses, primary care providers, and many others, especially part of the Great Resignation that started in 2015 and might have, I would say, really taken off after COVID. And for this reason, we have assembled a group of amazing expert colleagues for a rich discussion of today's topic on employee engagement, and they will share their perspectives from national and regional viewpoints. I'd now like each of the panelists to briefly introduce themselves and their affiliations, and then I'll sort of just frame the discussion with a why, and then we'll hear back from them. So Lydia, do you want to do an introduction of yourself?
Sure. Hi, my name is Lydia Dawson. I'm the Director of Policy, Regulatory, and Legal Analysis for ANCHOR. ANCHOR is the National Association of Community Providers supporting people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. But this is a lifelong field for me. I started out as a direct care worker, and after going to law school, I worked as a staff attorney for Maine's Protection and Advocacy Agency, and then went on to represent the Association of Community Providers in Maine and then in Idaho before landing with ANCHOR. So I'm so happy to have the opportunity to engage with you today and look forward to the discussion.
Thanks, Lydia. Erin?
I am Erin Drummond. I am the Assistant Vice President for Training and Development at Wood Services. I'm lucky enough to work with Tine, and she already explained what we do here at Woods.
And Marco?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marco Giordano. I'm the CEO for Resources for Human Development. I have been with the organization 16 years, been CEO for 5, and I'm looking forward to hearing and participating in the great conversation today. So thank you, everyone, for joining.
And Tony?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tony Pergolin. I'm the president and CEO of Bancroft. Bancroft, like all the other providers on the call, supports children and adults with autism, intellectual and developmental disabilities, and brain injuries. I've been with Bancroft for 18 years. I'm the CEO for 16, and I am really honored to be here to join in the discussion today. So thank you.
Sounds good. Great. We're going to get back to our phenomenal panel shortly, but let me just sort of set the stage with the why and why we had to transform Woods and the series, and why we wrote the books about really the stage we went through and what we've learned. Now, when I came to Woods a little 6 years ago, I thought I understood everything about vulnerable populations and how to wrap services around them. But quite frankly, I had not seen a population as vulnerable and medical and behavioral complex as the people that Woods serves. And I know others here on the panel. And it was, from my perspective, an exciting opportunity to use some of my healthcare background to reimagine and reposition Woods with the team here for health and development. Now, Woods needed to prepare for a rapidly changing the market forces, become more nimble in responding to the changing national, regional, and local landscape in the intellectual disability sector, and become a lot more aligned with healthcare, where many of the differences in quality of care and outcomes can be made. Along with the way, we also need to figure out how we better support and engage our workforce, an amazing workforce of nearly 6,000 employees across our system of care in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. So our book on transformation, and I hope you pick it up, or you actually use a QR code and get the PDF version. It's about all the things we learned over the course of the past 6 years. Just to sort of give you the headlines, we needed a vision that took into consideration the need for real solutions that helps to address, things that were not necessarily available to the people we serve. We needed a strategy and a framework that responded to the changing policy environment and funding landscape, and really create a truly integrated care model. And we needed to build a culture of innovation that would actually allow employees at any level of our system to think creatively and come up with new ideas. Change management also was needed and happened throughout the organization. And we needed to get the word out about some of the new approaches we were developing and to educate government agencies, funders, and policymakers. There's lots in the book. We're proud of it. It was a team effort to write it. It really is a book that prepares us to move into our next stage, which is building this and continue to build this system of care. So Nick already mentioned the two next symposiums: integrated care for complex care for special populations, and also strategies for avoiding the cliff. So we hope you will join us for that as well. But with that, I'm now going to turn it over to our amazing panelists to speak for about 10 minutes or a little bit more, maybe. I'm going to start with Lydia, who'll share her perspective from the national landscape, and then we'll go into a discussion with Aaron, Marco, and Tony. Lydia?
Great. Well, thank you so much. I'm just going to take a quick moment here to share my screen. I have a couple slides I'd love to share with you just about our recent research on the impact of the workforce crisis on access to services. So one of the things that Anchor has been trying to closely follow is the direct support workforce crisis and how it ultimately impacts our ability to not only provide quality services, but the ability to provide services at all. I'm sure it comes as no surprise, and as everyone is intimately familiar, that we've had a workforce crisis for decades now. The ability to hire and retain direct support professionals has reached critical levels, and we've been saying that for a number of years. But what Anchor found was that the pandemic has drastically increased the rates of turnover and vacancy to the point that it's impacting the entire home and community-based services infrastructure. So I was hoping to tell you a little bit about some of the key findings from our most recent report. We were, fortunate or unfortunate, depending on how you look at it, that we fielded our first workforce stability survey and report right before COVID hit. So in February of 2020, we analyzed and produced a report that assessed the workforce shortage and how it was impacting the ability of community providers to provide services. And what that did for us is it laid a baseline of what it looked like prior to the pandemic. And because of that, we were able to do a follow-up survey in 2021 in the middle of the pandemic, and then most recently in this August 2022, as we begin thinking about what the unwinding from the public health emergency looks like. So over a 4-week period in August of 2022, we fielded the third of our surveys across our provider network. We got approximately 718 individualized responses back from different organizations providing supports and services to people with intellectual and developmental disabilities across the nation. And what we found was that the workforce crisis is now to the point of really closing services and making it more and more difficult for people to find services at all. I think up until this point, we were really assessing the quality of services. How is high rates of turnover and vacancy impacting a beneficiary's experience with those services? But now we're really at this point of whether there are services at all. So I'd like to just review a couple of those key findings with you today. We found that 83% of providers are turning away new referrals. And then we found that that was a 25.8% increase from pre-pandemic. And what that figure pre-pandemic increase refers to is that initial survey from February of 2020. So right before the pandemic, this represented a drastic increase, a 25.8% increase in providers rejecting new referrals. And this is again specific to the staffing crisis. So this was for no other reason other than the inability to have staff to meet those referrals. And perhaps the two most concerning and staggering statistics that we found from our most recent survey, 63% of providers are discontinuing programs and services. So again, this is specific to the staffing shortage. For staffing purposes alone, 63% of providers are discontinuing programs or services. And when we compare that to that February 2020 number, that's an 85.3% increase. And so it's really exemplary of the fact that the pandemic accelerated the exodus of direct support professionals from our field. And, some of that is certainly attributable to the new hazards that were introduced with providing close contact services. But with the emergence of vaccines and the stabilization that we've seen across the pandemic, that factor slowly subsided, and the primary driver being the shift in the private market, that suddenly box stores, retail, convenience, which have always competed for our workers at entry-level industries, suddenly we're paying far and beyond what providers could pay as an entry-level wage. Because the private market was able to shift in that way, it really put Medicaid providers behind, because Medicaid does not shift in that same way that the private market does. Reimbursement rates have been stagnant for decades, and this was just representative of reimbursement rates not meeting this new labor needs as all of these other industries were able to offer more. And so that's really what we're looking at when we see an 85.3% increase in providers closing services due to a lack of staffing. We saw the staff leave with the pandemic and not return to the point that providers had to simply discontinue the program. We asked as a follow-up question with this new survey, are you done discontinuing programs and services? Have you closed the ones that you need to close and you're able to continue operating at the rate of vacancy and turnover? And 55% of providers said they're considering additional service discontinuations. That if we are unable to stabilize the workforce and slow that rate of people leaving our field, that more than half of providers said they would have to continue discontinuing additional services. We continue to assess the same factors that we did prior to the pandemic. We were initially looking at things like quality standards with our first survey, and what we're finding is that almost every provider is struggling to achieve quality standards because of the rates of turnover and vacancies. So we saw 92% of providers say that they're struggling to achieve those standards. Now that we know that the public health emergency declaration will end or at least is planned to end on May 11th of this year. This statistic becomes concerning. Also, 66% of providers are concerned that vacancy and turnover rates will increase with the end of the public health emergency. This is largely due to states that had taken opportunities through like Appendix Ks and 1135s, emergency waivers to offer flexibilities that weren't there before to stabilize the workforce. And while it was intended to stabilize during a pandemic, it also acted to stabilize as much of the workforce crisis as it could. And that's in many ways become the new norm, that we've become very reliant on these flexibilities. And now that the public health emergency is coming to an end and states are having to go back to reduced reimbursement rates, back to change staffing ratios, back to providing services in very specific service settings, all of those things have the opportunity to impact the workforce and potentially worsen the workforce crisis. And so that's where you're seeing that 66% of providers concerned. We asked an additional question if the respondents to the survey offered case management in addition, and of those that did offer case management or service coordination, were they struggling to find providers? We have all of this data that providers are closing. Is that truly creating a result that people trying to connect eligible individuals with services are unable to find those services? And 71% of respondents who offered case management or service coordination said that they are struggling to find available providers in the field. If you follow Anchor or you have an opportunity to read any of our reports, we do have a few recommendations that we'd like to see federal regulatory changes to increase funding for workforce initiatives, to professionalize and offer federal recognition of the occupational classification for direct support professionals. And we'd also like to see opportunities for federal engagement that supports career pipelines for programs for direct support professionals. But you can read any more about those or ask questions later on if it's helpful. And this is my contact information. If I can ever be of assistance, I'm simply one email away. Would love to hear from you and appreciate the opportunity to be part of this panel today.
So before we go to the one question, I think that's related because you have the national perspective, Lydia. One of our colleagues are asking, do you think the reduction, especially in our field, has to do with sort of the low wages and maybe poor management? So just curious about what you're thinking. I mean, I have my perspective having grown up in Western, in Denmark, where we very early on recognized that simply these type of jobs that are caring for individuals that are really hard jobs cannot be solved with your population that's living in your country or resident. It really has to be more an international workforce. So I'm just curious, I mean, before we go to other panels, if you just want to address that, do you think, it has to do with a correlation of both, the wages, but also management?
I think honestly that providers are doing everything that they can possibly think of to engage the workforce. And I think we see that reflected in the survey that people are simply closing services. I think no provider wants to close services or hopes that the end result of not being able to engage employees is that they would have to close the business. And so I really do believe that providers are doing everything in their capacity to keep services alive and keep direct support professionals in their positions. So I can't speak too much to poor management, because I do really believe that every opportunity that people have to make those changes, they do, because ultimately the end result, if they don't, is that the program is closed. I really believe that this is due to low wages, and I believe the low wages come from the fact that reimbursement rates are consistently below market value and consistently not keeping up with inflation rates. And a provider can only shift so much of a reimbursement rate to wages before it doesn't sustain the service anymore, and it simply has to close. And so it really does cap out at a certain amount. And at this stage, what we're seeing nationally is it's not it's capping out at a place that's still significantly below entry-level industries in retail, in convenience stores, in fast food, other places where people could get positions starting out that they could get paid a lot more with significantly less responsibility, and people are simply making the choice to do that.
Great. Well, thanks, Lydia. All right, let's go next to Erin. Do you want for your sort of talk about sort of the Woods experience and what we've done here to mitigate some of the challenges?
Sure. So I've been at Woods for over 20 years, almost 21 years now, and I've always been really, really lucky in that Woods has always had a commitment to training our employees. However, about 6-7 years ago when we started our transformation, there was a really big shift that changed our perspective from developing employees to developing people, which is a big mindset shift. And this kind of came naturally because we started looking at ourselves and realizing we were a population health provider. And when you apply those same principles, we started applying it to the people receiving services, obviously. That's what we do. We give these people services. However, we quickly realized in her infinite wisdom, what else? We have another population here, and it's the population of our employees, right? So we started applying those principles. And so my role really shifted from how do we develop an employee and just the job skills to what else can we do to develop them personally as a whole entire person. One of the things really early on that we did that was probably, in my opinion, one of the most significant things was we opened up a health center on our campus that employees were able to access. It really showed people that, we have a commitment to your health and your well-being. We want you to be healthy. So it had a huge impact for those people, and it really got them engaged with our organization, with Woods. You might hear me cough throughout this presentation because I have a little bit of a cold. I'm lucky enough where I can walk across our campus or down the hall and I can go over and see a provider just like that. It makes me feel like my employer cares about me, and our employees all have that same access. So we provide services not only health-wise to the individuals receiving care here at Woods, but also to all of our employees. As we started going through the transformation, we wrote a really great strategic plan, and that is reflected in the book that Teen has referenced and that Nick has shared in the chat. And that plan really, it carved out a section for employee engagement. Employee engagement became such a meaningful thing to our organization and our board that it became its own section within our strategic plan. So, it's not let's have a pizza party. Let's make people feel good on this one day in this one moment. It was, how do we really strategically get people engaged long-term, right? It's not just in this moment, not just for this month, but long-term, like, what is it that we can do to make people want to be here and want to stay here? And while they're here, feel like it's a back and forth, right? Woods cares about me, I care about Woods. So there was really two main components. One was our DEI strategy, and that is embedded within employee engagement, right? So that strategy, we created a committee, and again, it's not just looking at these surface things. How do people get along and treat people with respect? Of course, it's all that, but it's also looking at human resources policies and figuring out, have we unintentionally created barriers to people's access? Have we unintentionally created situations where people are not brought to the table when they should be brought to the table? So very strategically, we created a committee. We had people from all levels of the organization. Their voices were in the room, and we looked at a lot of things that, we've always done it that way. Is that a good thing? In some cases, yes, amazing. In some cases, maybe we can do that a little bit better. Maybe that thing that we created 20, 30 years ago isn't working in the 2020s. So the other component was, DEI is its own living, breathing thing. The DEI committee created their own document, their own plan. That plan changes all the time. It's not like these are our 3 things we're working on. It's always changing based off of the needs of the organization and based off of the needs of what employees are telling us. Our other very main area that started, again, very early on in our transformation, and we're so lucky to have had this in place before the pandemic hit, was our career and education advancement opportunities. So exactly to Lydia's point, we know we're in a crisis, right? We have really great people that work here that have really great skills. we can't promote them in some circumstances because they don't have the educational requirements that the state of Pennsylvania tells us we need our employees to have in certain positions. So how do we bridge that gap? How do we get these great employees who have been here long term and are doing a great job and have wonderful talents and skills to the point where we can promote them from within? And also those people that we're bringing in, how do we also, offer these opportunities to them? So, this created a whole entire separate part of what I oversee, which is training and development. Again, back to my earlier point, I used to focus on training. Now we have an entire part of my department that focuses on employee development. So we did a lot of things that, aren't that great. I mean, that unique. We did the career paths and, we went through that process. We have educational cohort programs, which I'm going to talk more about in a minute. But the thing that really, I think, makes Woods unique and really has made this program work out so well for us is that we created a position. We have a person whose job it is to operationalize our career paths. So it's not just something we give out on paper. We have an employee whose job is to, somebody reaches out, I'm thinking about school, I'm not sure if it's for me, I don't know what I want to do with my life. She sits down with these employees and spends hours talking through what a career path might look like for them, right? So we have what's on paper. She turns that into real life. What can this look like for you? So, she's a social worker by nature. It's really a true social work position. It really encompasses helping people, look at the career path, look at educational opportunities. What do you want to do? What's going to work best for you, right? So we created, like I mentioned, educational cohorts. One of our educational cohort programs is through Harcum University. It's an associate's degree. There are several different pathways that people can get their associates through Harcum. Behavioral health and, human services are the two main ones. So as you can imagine, employees who have worked here for 5, 10, 20 years, it's very nerve-wracking to go back to school. Terrifying. Many people did not have a good high school experience, or they started college and, had a terrible first semester, dropped out, never looked back. So again, we have this person whose job it is to say, I'm going to help you through it. We have these resources. She went through it herself, so she has her own personal story with it. So we've been really successful with our Harcum program. We have had 75 people that have participated in these programs. So many are still currently enrolled. We've had graduates that, our first two graduates from the Harcum program have now completed a bachelor's degree and are in our other cohort program through Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine, and that's a master's program. So we're seeing people start off with a high school diploma or GED who are now in a master's program, and Woods has, contributed and sponsored a lot of these educational opportunities for them, which is amazing to see. When we saw these two ladies sign up for our master's program, me and our person that, that I was just speaking about, that position, we're in the background, doing cheering, because it's just amazing to see people thriving through these programs. So that is our other program that we offer on site as a cohort. It's, Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine. We partnered with them. We worked with them. Absolutely wonderful university to partner with, because they said, what do you need? And we said, let's work together. And we created this program really tailored to what we need for our leaders at Woods and in the nonprofit field and in the future of population health. I had a master's, and during that planning process, I quickly realized I want another master's because this sounds amazing. So I went through the first cohort, and I can attest it is an amazing program. It's, geared towards adult learners. We've had 45 graduates from the PCOM program. We're currently on our third cohort, and we have, I think, 24 people in that cohort right now. Of those people, that have already graduated, more than half have been promoted to, opportunities within our organization. So whether it's Woods or one of our affiliate agencies, we have proven upward mobility from this program, from these programs, from Harcum and from the PCOM program. So, we've over the years, I was looking up some numbers before because I wanted to see how much really have we invested in education over the past 2 fiscal years. And it's about $500,000 that we've put into supporting the development and education of our employees at Woods, whether it be through our PCOM, our HARCOM, our tuition reimbursement program, which not everybody is going to fit at HARCOM or PCOM. We also have partnerships with Capella University, Drexel University. We're always developing new partnerships with universities. So throwing that out there, if anybody has any contacts that they would like to put us in touch with, because we want our employees to have as many opportunities as possible, because what works for one person won't work for another. And, you know, through all of those things, like I said, I mean, $500,000 in 2 fiscal years is a significant investment in our employees. On the opposite side of that, those employees are so engaged with our organization. You know, the turnover rates are so high at human services agencies. In our PCOM cohorts, from all of our graduates, we have about a turnover rate of 6%. So people are going through these programs, they're staying. For our HARCOM program, we have a turnover rate of around 11%. And those are, you know, the DSP positions. So people aren't leaving. When we're engaging them through the development and through our investment in their education and their career growth, they're staying here. And when they don't stay here, to be honest with you, the only places they're going are to one of our affiliates that are within our system of care. So it's been really amazing. Are you turning your thing on? Did I go too long, Teen? Or do I have a few more minutes? Okay. So another thing I think we did really well with the transformation and all of our strategic planning on this engagement was early on, we had town halls, we had transparency, we told people what we were doing. We created online presentations that we distributed through our online learning platform to let people know this is what we're doing. These are the changes you're going to see. We want you to come with us. We want you to be along this ride with us. We have great plans and great visions for the future of Woods, and people reacted really well to that. You know, we gave out surveys, we asked for feedback, especially very early on. How can we support you? What can we do? What would make you feel more, you know, part of the Woods community? What can we do to bring you to the table? So that change management process that we employed early on, I think we still employ now, and has really allowed for us to retain the people who want to be here and want to, you know, be part of this wonderful transformation that we've gone through. And then we have so many things on the horizon too. So we have, Teen was talking earlier about, you know, the visa program. We have a work visa program that we are developing. We're at the end of the process. We have over 50 individuals that are coming on a work visa to Woods. And the great thing about it is it's a friends and family program. So they know people here that can help acclimate them to the Woods environment. But their families get to come with them too. So we're sponsoring their visa and the visa for their family members, which again, I don't know how anyone could be more engaged with an organization if we're, you know, bringing them, you know, over to work for us. We're sponsoring them, we're sponsoring their families. We're also looking at, I've mentioned a few times when we see upward mobility, sometimes it's within Woods and sometimes it's within our system of care and our affiliate network. So we're looking at new ways to create easier pathways for employees to figure out where are the growth opportunities in the entire system of care. You know, they have access to Woods or they have access to allies, but how can they access all of that? So that's in development, you know, trying to centralize some way to do that. And then another fantastic thing we're doing, I think I saw Dr. Musaniri on here. We have Woods professionals that are training future practitioners that will be the future, you know, nurses, nurse practitioners, dental providers for people with disabilities all over the country, probably. So we have these programs where we have our health center, we have the Penn Dental Clinic that we just opened, which is run by Penn Dental on our campus. And we're able to train new and upcoming healthcare practitioners that would have never had the opportunity to learn about working with people with disabilities in such an inclusive way without having that on our campus. So that's another way that we're engaging not only our employees here, but, you know, employees from all over. Maybe somebody in, you know, Texas meets somebody who trained at Woods and says, you know, they moved to the Philadelphia area and they remember our name, right? So they think, oh, they're on the forefront of things. So they also, you know, could have that in their head. So we just really, we've never taken our foot off the gas when it comes to engagement from the time that team came to Woods. It's been a priority, which is amazing for me because that's always been the passion of mine. And we've really been able to anchor that through the creation of the position of the enhanced benefit specialist that really operationalizes all of our career paths, all of our educational benefits, all of our cohort programs, any added assistance. And she really, I believe without having a person in that position, it's easy to get distracted. It's easy to get distracted by, a pandemic. It's easy to get distracted by the chaos and the short staffing, but it's her job to do this and to keep it moving. And it's been so successful that one of our affiliates actually has created that position. So we've expanded into New Jersey with a similar position for our New Jersey affiliates. Yeah.
Thank you, Erin. And I would say that, one of the questions, yes, there are contractual relationships, especially in our cohort models. We're also sponsoring some of our, clinicians, et cetera. We do that. So we do have that. I think many other folks on the panels do the same thing. And Lydia, I might return later on to some policy perspectives because I think we have an incredible supported board. We're a nonprofit, so we have the ability to invest in this program every year. So it really takes that village of not only our staff, et cetera, supporting this, but also our board supporting employee engagement. So some of them I see some of them, so I want to thank them for that. All right, Marco, let's go to RHD.
Yes, hey, good afternoon again, everyone. Marco Giordano, CEO for Resources for Human Development, RHD. Let me start off by just sharing with you all a little bit about RHD. We're a national human services and healthcare organization. We have 4,000 employees in 13 states. We are a diverse organization, not just geographically, but in service delivery, serving children, adults, and families. We operate 4 main service lines, including IDD, behavioral health and housing, healthcare, and our Philadelphia-based FQHC. We're providing residential, day, outpatient, mobile, case management, outreach, and shelter services, substance use, primary care, dental, and many other school, facility, and community-based services. We are an organization that is rich in culture, grounded by our 3 basic assumptions. People are of equal human worth. People are essentially good unless proven otherwise. And there is no single right way to manage corporate issues well. So over the past 5 years, RHD has made investments in compensation, benefits, training, and development towards recruiting and retaining skilled and quality staff. And we continue to do so, just like many of us here today. These are the must-haves towards recruiting and retaining staff. I think no one would disagree with that. On the list of reasons why employees leave their job, you will also find company culture. Company culture is reflected in the top 5 reasons of many surveys as a reason why someone may leave their current employer. So at RHD, we believe a rich organizational culture is the foundation to recruiting, retaining, and engaging staff. And that is where we invest a significant amount of time and resources, much of which cannot be measured. As they say in that MasterCard commercial, it's priceless. So what about our culture makes us successful, makes us different? What I would share with you all is that our culture is best represented in their 10 values. Our values themselves represent actions and outcomes, and when they're linked together, we have the ultimate success within our service delivery, but also in supporting and engaging our staff. Our 10 values start with our foundational value of respect for the dignity and worth of each individual. With respect at our core, we embrace empowerment of groups, multi-level thinking, diversity and inclusion, honesty and trust. And with those, a community is created, where the RHD community is created, and we value an open and safe culture, creativity, and professional and personal enrichment is provided. And through that, we achieve organizational integrity and provide quality service. Those are our 10 values within our organization that really define our culture as RHD, that we believe results in the retention of staff and ultimately how we're engaging staff with that outcome of retention every day. So how do those values, what do those values look like, right? So how do we live those values in a way to create the culture that we have within our organization? I want to share a few aspects with you. There's not enough time to share all of them with you. So one philosophy we have within our organization is an open space, an open office space. And if any of you have ever visited our spaces, you would have seen what this looks like. There's no offices, no cubicles. No one has an office, including myself. We have found that this promotes inclusion, community, open communication, and redistributes power. No one has the corner office with the windows. During the pandemic, and as we continue to step out of the pandemic and maintain a level of remote work, which I also think is important in today's environment, we are challenged with maintaining the benefits of being together in the open space. So that's something that we're currently working with, and I know that we'll solve successfully as we continue to work with it. My guess is some of you are probably challenged by that same issue today, as well, as we're all trying to create a new normal for ourselves. The other philosophy we have in our organization is reflected by the pin that I'm wearing, which you might not be able to read, and it says question authority. This is a philosophy we have within our organization that promotes curiosity and the questioning of each other, the asking of why, the asking of what if. This philosophy is grounded in the belief that everyone benefits from the expression of multiple perspectives. It's important to hear the voices of others. We can all learn, and within the work we do, benefit from hearing each other to get to the best solution. This is also a path towards rebalancing power, opening the doors for diverse and multi-level thinking and inclusion. So question authority. We're also a trauma-informed organization using a trauma-informed approach to our work, supporting each other in the community as well, not just the individuals we support every day, but supporting each other as human beings. So what that has looked like within our organization, not only during the past 3 years, but through our long history, has been focusing on providing opportunities for staff to learn and to be supported and educated through our trauma-informed care speaker series, which touched on topics like trauma and COVID-19, racism as an adverse childhood experience, the impact of burnout and organizational stress. We also, over the past probably 8 months or so, have held a number of sessions focused on gun violence, listening and support sessions that our staff could attend by choice and be supported given the level of gun violence that we're experiencing across the country. We also have established what we call virtual open office hours. It's an opportunity for our staff to gain some clinical support through group sessions with staff. It's an opportunity for staffs to express themselves in some of the most challenging times that we've experienced, I think, over the past 3 years. And we've continued that, knowing as being a trauma-informed organization, knowing how important that outlet and that forum is. And we also have opportunities for our staff to support each other, whether it be through PTO donation or other types of relief funds that we've established as part of our organization. Another aspect of our culture, reflecting our values, is we lean into difficult conversations and learning as part of our quarterly ISMS meeting. So in past quarters, we focused on sizeism. We've had sessions on racial aggression and hostility from participants, microaggressions, and many other topics. During the racial awakening in 2020, as a result of the murder of George Floyd, we gathered as a group via Zoom. There was probably about 500 people on the call, creating an open forum for staff to share and express their feelings and experiences. It was a very powerful and important opportunity, and experience and forum for all of us to participate in. We also believe that there's power in the collective thinking, when making decisions. So we've created what we call communities of practice, where individuals in similar roles and functions come together to share ideas and best practices. We've also created many opportunities for our staff to share their voices, whether it be through our suggestion box or CARES outline. We encourage open communication. We don't look to our structure to govern communication. We encourage folks to communicate outside of structure. We have stay and exit interviews and surveys, and we also have what we call our Together We're Better survey that we go through each year as well. We, as in part of empowering groups, we emphasize local decision making. We delegate decision making as close to service delivery as possible. And I would share with you all that over the past probably 10 years, if not longer, I've been with the organization 16. It's something that we've struggled with. We have been in the past been a very decentralized organization. We're now moving more towards standardization. So it's definitely been a journey, and it's something that we continue to work through together, learn from the change that's occurring, and continue to shift as we need to. And we also celebrate our diversity and individual cultures. We frequently have corporate-wide events to learn, to engage, and most importantly, have fun together. There's probably not a corporate-wide event that doesn't end in some kind of trivia with some prizes for folks to be engaged, not only in learning and appreciating our differences, but also being engaged in the work that we do. So being a diverse service provider in 13 states also creates a lot of additional opportunity for inclusion, the multi-level thinking and creativity. Having that breadth of diversity, having all the diversity of thinking and life experiences really makes the gatherings that we have really powerful. And if there was any silver lining in the pandemic, it was seeing the feeling and the power of virtual meetings. Being a national organization, virtual meetings were not new to us. However, when we all went remote, it changed the picture, literally. Now everyone was included equally. We all had our four corners. Folks that weren't in the room now had the same experience as everybody else. And it really shifted how we were able to engage with each other. And as I mentioned, wow, the knowledge and the insight that we were able to gain by having more people together in a way that was more effective was truly incredible. The celebrations that I mentioned earlier became even more fun via Zoom. So we're staying on that path. We're going to continue to have many of our recurring corporate-wide meetings and events virtually to really be able to engage staff across the country, while we also implement technology in our administrative spaces to continue to engage in a similar way when we're in person in groups. So I share with you just some of the aspects of our culture. No one thing that I share with you today defines our culture, nor will any one of these actions individually solve the challenges of recruitment, retention, and staff engagement. Much like our values, it is how we link them together to have ultimate success. We are a learning organization. I know there's a few of my colleagues here on the call that can attest that we are not perfect. And we work every day to learn from our experiences so we can impact and improve our ability to recruit, retain, and engage staff. So I appreciate everybody listening. And again, thanks Social Innovations Journal for the opportunity to present on the panel.
Sounds good, Marco. And full disclosure, I got my early career starting my nonprofit out of something called the New Beginnings program at RHD, and for many years worked with the FQHC. That was part of a network that I ran, and there's always been that RHD secret sauce, and I think it is that core of the values, how you brained it all into. I don't know how you guys do it, but I always said that you had it, and you had DEI and all the stuff we talk about way before anybody even used the word. So thanks, Marco, for sharing it. And I think it's such a unique organization. And from a Danish perspective, it feels very much like home. So I've always said that about RHD. But anyways, let's go. Tony, let's get to you and then hear from Bancroft and some of the very unique things I know you've done and with your team.
Thank you. And, I'll just start this by saying it's really tough to go last after great
presentations like this. So I think that you'll hear through some of my initiatives that they're similar to some of the other providers. And, with a little tweak. So maybe hopefully you're all getting, a few nuggets from all of us on ones that perhaps work best for your organization. I really appreciated kicking this off with Lydia from Anchor, and I think she really set out the real issue that we're all dealing with here. We are dealing with a crisis, and more than ever, people need our services, and you saw in her numbers that we're closing, right, because of staffing. So I think this is really a critically important initiative for all of us, and you'll hear through my remarks certainly at Bancroft as well. I'm going to start with really just a high-level overview of Bancroft, so you can understand the context of our staff members and some of the initiatives we're doing. So Bancroft provides services in 3 states: New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. We serve 800 in our residential and day programs, 400 in our educational programs, and 2,000 in outpatient programs. And to serve those individuals, we have a very dedicated staff of about 3,000. And I would tell you that, recruitment and retention have always been the priority in the organization. But going through COVID, I think really taught us all that it needs to be a bigger priority than it was, which is hard to believe because it was all we ever really focused on. But coming out of COVID, we learned that our employees have different needs today than before. And we as employers, we need to really step up and support them differently so that we can continue to provide the access of care to those we serve. And so in our most recent strategic plan, we too have developed a specific component to do just that. And we've titled it Transform the Employee Experience. And I believe that's really what we need to do. It can't be the same job that they had before. We really need to transform the way that that their job is here and that they're supported. So just briefly on our strategic plan, it's called Changing Lives. That's really focused on changing lives of those we serve, changing lives of their families, changing the lives in our industry, and then changing the lives of our team members. And the components of the plan are, of course, to grow, right? I think all of our strategic plans are really focused on how we continue to expand access to our services. Like you, I'm sure every day, like us, you are getting calls of people who are desperately trying to get in, and we can't grow fast enough. And this plan is really to help organizations like us and really all around us to be able to say yes to when people need it, because when they call, they need it right now. Another component is to inspire clinical excellence so that everybody we serve gets an outstanding outcome. We want to leverage technology. We haven't really talked about technology today. I'll talk a little bit about that. And then finally, as I mentioned, to transform the employee experience. And in this plan, the transforming the employee experience is probably the most important, because everything else can't happen if we don't have our staff. So this, I think, is really our main area of focus. So we've broke it down in between both recruiting and retention initiatives. And I'll start with recruiting. And, number one, we all know this. I think that we need to keep this on our forefront even more than it already is, but we need to pay them better. Like, we know that. And, we advocate for rate increases and we do a lot of things around rate increases, but at the end of the day, with or without rate increases, I believe we really need to focus on paying them better. And now in New Jersey, which is where most of our services are, we have and I would say it's, there's pros and cons to the minimum wage increase. right? I would say the pro is it brought light to these staff that shouldn't be paid the $10 they were. And over, next year, it'll be the 15. That was the good part. The bad part was it everybody else, all of our, competitors, retail, fast food, they got to 20. And we're still like working on our, on our 12, 13, right? So I think it really impacted the market quicker than anybody anticipated it did, but it really began to allow us to focus on, and our funders, that we had to pay more. As far as funders, DVD or our adult funder, one of our largest, actually does increase the rates every year just to address it. That's the good part. The bad part is not all the other funders do. So as an organization, you've got to figure out how we can do this for everybody. But, I can tell you in this last year, coming out of the 2 years of the workforce crisis, we've never had so many vacancies. And really, again, just like Lydia was saying, we weren't admitting, we were, really stagnant. And so we, as an organization, decided to really put more, and quite honestly, I was a little nervous about it than we could have ever thought of in our wage increase, just to really get it competitive and get it much more, something that people would be interested in. And the way we did it was really breaking down all the different ways we pay people. So we've had bonuses, we had incentives, we had differentials, we had this and that and the other thing. And we took them all away and put it right in the base. So on day one, you didn't have to do all these different things to get another quarter and another dollar here. It was in your base. And I can tell you, it worked. If you pay them, they will come. And so, we're, of course, trying to balance all that, because overtime doesn't go down the minute you hire somebody, right? It takes a while to get them in the schedule and everything. So we're still working through that. But what we learned through that is we've got to figure out a way to pay them. And another thing we're doing as we go through this process is, and I ask you to think about this in your organizations, we do a lot of things in this organization that are wonderful things that we don't get paid for. And we've got to really own up to, if we really want to pay our workers, we can't, we have to really make sure we're only providing services we get paid for. And so that's a tough message, but I think it's important if you truly want to keep wages front and center. So we're focusing on that as well. So pay, I would say, is number one, and just continuing to work at getting that higher. From a recruiting process, we're doing some things different there as well. So for sure, some of the same things. We do a lot of hosting the job fairs in our communities. We partner with the local colleges and universities on site and in their classrooms. A lot of those things were things we did all the time. Some of the things we do differently is how we market to them. So we're using digital marketing techniques to target audiences. So we're not just doing the big billboards to anybody who drives by, but very specifically to people who we think are right for this field. We do drip campaigns. So, right, we're sending them constantly like, oh, here's a new benefit. Oh, here's a great story, really to keep them interested. So, our philosophy is just if you say no today, it means no today. It may be later. So we keep dripping them when we keep dripping them. And here's other things happening at Bancroft. So we keep them engaged and it keeps them interested. And then passive sourcing. So instead of just waiting for people to come to us, we're actually going out and seeing people on some of the third-party databases on the internet, people we want to work here. And again, it takes a little bit longer, but there's something nice about somebody saying, we want you, instead of thinking like they're constantly looking. So, just a couple different things that we're trying to do to really reach out and touch potential candidates in different ways. So recruitment really just gets them in the door, right? So they come to us, maybe they're paying a little bit more, but now, as we're all talking about, it's keeping them. And that I think is actually harder than getting them in the front door. So, Marco, you talked at length about culture, which I think is so critical and something that you have to continually work on. At Woods, Aaron, you talked about different initiatives you're doing, and I would say we're doing some of the similar ones, but with a little twist to them. So we're looking at all of our retention, and this is through the strategic plan as well, and we're marketing them as be with the letter B, be you, be well, be extraordinary. And that is something you'll see all throughout our organization. And Be You is all about the D&I initiative, right? We want you to be your authentic self. It is about inclusive work environment with D&I initiatives we have in place. We've done a ton of training. Now we're doing coaching sessions so that the managers and the leaders really, like, we can hear it all, but what happens when this happens to an employee? So we're doing coaching sessions now, of course, celebrating diversity throughout the year. We too have a council and a steering committee. I learned a lot of great things you guys are doing. I think we can work in those. We are reworking our org-wide mission statement. So, when all this D&I started, we have a DE&I mission statement, and we have an organizational-wide mission statement. And now we're putting it together because it's one mission that we have, and it's all about what the purpose that we have and how we feel about our staff. So little things that I think really will go a long way to letting employees know that we want you to feel like you belong here. This place is for you. The second one is Be Well, and that's more than just the benefits, which I feel like we're always working at, but it's caring about the well-being of our staff and their families. So a little like, Erin, you talked about caring about the person rather than just training them for the work that they do. This is like the well-being. So something similar. We've had, we don't have the healthcare on our campus, but we do have some partners in this. So Health, who provides care coordination. I mean, we all know that even for us, it's complex to get through the healthcare system. And so for DSPs and for our other staff who don't have the time, we have provided this care coordination who can help you get your primary, help you get your prescriptions, kind of help your family do whatever they need to do. We've got something called WellWorks that's really focused on being proactive about your health, right? We want you healthy. We want you here. We want your family healthy. We've instituted things like on-demand pay, which maybe some of you had, right? So you don't have to actually wait till payday. If you've earned the money, you can access your money today. Amazing to me how many people do that. And I wonder how they pay their rent on time if they've already spent their money, but it's great to be able to offer that to those who want it. We got to be a lot better around flexible and hybrid schedules so that they can balance work and life a little bit better. And, we were saying that, and now we're really putting some teeth behind it because we really want people to feel they've got flexibility. Improve workplace safety, right? Who wants to come to work thinking they're going to get hurt? So we really want to focus on that too. And some of it's training, some of it's technology, just really want to focus on, we want you to be safe here. And then really, and as basic as this sounds, it's amazing to me how critical it is to help our staff and help the schedules, have them time for breaks, right? Give them a break so they can reduce their workout, they can make, or their burnout, they can make the call they need. So really focusing on the staff and that whole work-life balance. And the last one is Be Extraordinary. And that's really about you and your personal development. So we have tools for our leaders to engage with staff. So 30, 60, 90 days, right? Somebody checks in with you, hear how it's going, what's good about this, but more important, what are your challenges? How do we as leaders help you through this? Even just navigating our very complex system. We have year-round supervision, developmental discussions, so we no longer do just the annual check-in, they're really year-round. We do talent assessment process on all of our leaders so we can identify our top performers, keep them engaged so that they know that we are focused on them and helping them grow and learn. A lot of focus on career development. A couple of people talked about that as well. For our DSPs, we have the DSP certification program. We were very fortunate to have a family fund that they get a 50-cent increase for the next 3 years as they go through this. And the other thing we're doing with the career ladders is, we get a lot of feedback in our surveys is all you care about is DSPs. I pause and I think, yeah, we do, because they're really important. But there are other important positions here too, and they need to feel like we care about them. And so in this plan, it's like for our corporate staff, you know what? Here's how you can learn and grow, and here's your career ladders, and our clinicians, and here's how you can grow, and our teachers. So really making everybody feel like we have different career paths for each one of you. We too, as some of you talked about, we partner with some of the universities. We have Rider University that we work with for masters in applied psychology. So we're building our own BCBAs. We partner with some of the local colleges as well. So, I mean, we really do need partnerships, I think, to be able to do this overall. And then, my last piece in this is, in the strategic plan for our staff is what we're calling make work easier, right? So we know their job is hard, like we know it is. And you know what, part that the direct care piece, working with these individuals, that's never going to go away. But here's what can get better, like working at Bancroft, right? Like, getting Wi-Fi when you need it, not having to, ask for your printer to be fixed 3 times, right? Not having to enter in your manual process 3 times, making sure your paycheck is right the first time. I mean, there's so many of these little things. We really want to make that better for them. We want them to feel like, you know what, we're making all this other stuff easier for you so that at the end of the day, you can focus on the direct care piece, because that's what they want to do. That's why they're here. So a lot of this initiative is how do we make just working at Bancroft easier? And some of it is eliminating manual processes. We're kicking off a pilot in our homes for smart homes, right? So we're hoping that will help some of their job a little bit easier. Prescription dispensers. So just a lot of those different things to just make it easier. And again, I'll end just as everybody is. We know it's just so important to keep our staff, really all 3,000 of them, no matter what position you're in. We need you here. We need to recruit you in. We need to pay you right. And we need to keep you happy and engaged. So those are just some of the things we're working on, and hopefully we'll be making an impact.
Awesome. Thank you, Tony. And just great, 3 different viewpoints, but I think all come together around a lot of different things. So I want to put my policy hat on, and I just want to say a shout out to everybody. If you have questions, etc., we have a little bit of time, so put them in the chat box, and Liz and I will look at them. But I want to sort of throw out the first question to Lydia from sort of both a national and also a statewide policy perspective. I've gone on the record now to say this, very widely and broadly to both Republicans and Democrats, that no matter what, we're not going to solve all the wonderful things everybody's doing here, and I know a lot of our colleagues are trying to do. We're not going to solve this without some sort of, whether it's immigration reform or support for a workforce that's ready and willing and somewhere else, and would love to come over to the U.S. So just wondering, Lydia, if you could sort of share what are some of Anchor's sort of policy priorities around sort of immigration, and maybe what are 1 or 2 recommendations you can give us. There's a lot of regional providers from other states too. What can we do at the state level, perhaps, to really push for, not only supporting some of the, I would say some of these things cost money. We self-fund a lot of this stuff. I know that, but also what can we do to push the states and also the federal government to make some changes to support us. And ultimately, we've spoken a little bit more about, I think, the intellectual disability sector. I literally had the same conversation with the nursing home sector for a panel I'm on next week around, again, the same workforce, direct care. So just curious if you can just, help us a little bit based on your perspective and expertise.
Sure. I mean, those are huge questions, many questions embedded in huge questions, all of them. And my recommendation to providers that are working within states is to become intimately familiar with your reimbursement rate methodology. I shared it as part of that initial presentation, but we can only offer wages that the reimbursement rates will support. And because we've gone through so many decades of not having reimbursement rates adjusted for inflation, adjusted for changes in the market, it's incredibly difficult to offer competitive wages. CMS is responsible, our federal government is responsible for assessing every state's reimbursement rate methodology and assessing whether or not it's appropriate to create an adequate network of providers and quality services. And I think what we see from our survey results is that we've really been derelict in that the reimbursement rates have gone so low and have not kept up with the changing market to such an extent that we're really not meeting those quality standards, and we're not meeting our provider network adequacy standards either, that providers are closing, people can't access services. But that federal government role is to oversee whether or not states are keeping up with that, and they approve those plans every time your state applies for permission to provide waiver services. And so within your state's application to the federal government, but also states will make these records public in other ways. Their reimbursement rate methodology, how they justify the payment that they're offering for the services, is within that application. And one really critical component is to look at is what do they think is an adequate wage to be offering direct support professionals and direct care workers generally. That's within the reimbursement rate methodology. They have to prove that rate is adequate, and so they have to prove that they've embedded an appropriate wage for this service. And people, I think, don't have a good sense often of what's in that reimbursement rate methodology and what states are offering to the federal government as an appropriate wage for direct support professionals. A lot of times those numbers are either really just low and unadjusted for inflation, but sometimes they're so low or they haven't been looked at in so long that it hasn't kept up with minimum wage. And so you can actually look back at your reimbursement rate methodology and see that the wage that they set and have not adjusted in their methodology for years at a time is now below what your state says is appropriate for minimum wage. And all of these things are opportunities to advocate with your state to adjust reimbursement rates, but also to advocate that the federal government needs to take a look at what's an appropriate reimbursement rate methodology. Is your state actually offering to the federal government for approval something that's workable? And in that one example, if the wage they're offering is below minimum wage, then it's clearly not workable. So that's my I think number one recommendation to advocates in states is to become intimately aware of how is your state suggesting to the federal government that it plans to pay for services, and is their plan appropriate, and is their plan for wages appropriate? Does that offer a competitive level of wage? Not just does it meet minimum standards, but is it a competitive level of wage so that you can really offer people livable wages? I think we wonder, how can people pay their rent? A lot of people can't pay their rent. Wages are so insufficient across the country that I believe, I'll double check this, but I believe 1 in 6 home care workers are also reliant on federal assistance, that we're down to the point that we're offering poverty level wages. And it's simply just a travesty that we can't continue to pay people so low. And it ultimately comes back to these reimbursement rates. What is your state paying for service, and what do they think is an adequate amount to pay for wages for the service?
So actually, before I want to just have you touch on the federal level on sort of immigration reform, but there is a paper that Dr. Scott Spree at Woods Social Innovations Journal, and also I think one of the local organizations working on mental health authored probably 3 years ago, before the pandemic. And to your point, Lydia, it looked at in this region, and this was both Pennsylvania and New Jersey, what would it take for a worker to be not dependent on public benefits, as you just said, right? And so, and it was $25 an hour. And that goes to sort of like there is this benchmark, and we're very far from that in this country in terms of, that at any level, quite frankly. So it's kind of interesting. And you talked about that. So just curious, I mean, what about immigration reform? And I'm talking a lot about it, and maybe I'm talking too much about it, but I do think that whether it's reform or whatever, taking advantage of the fact that probably for the first time ever can we sponsor green cards. But the challenge is it's very costly for agencies. So any sort of noise on that level, having just been in Congress, I do think there is a level of interest in this. But it has to be sold at the bipartisan level, because everybody's focused on, I think, the wrong part of immigration. Yet we're all foreigner here. I mean, we all came here, right? So just curious about that, what the thought is, because I think no matter what we do, I'd still go back to, our workforce is very international. If you come to Wood Services, we have 54 flags here representing countries where people, their origin, where it came from, including myself, Denmark, right? So just curious about your thoughts around that.
I think there's a lot of really interesting ideas about how we could approach immigration reform to expand the workforce. I think it's incredibly important that we pursue every avenue we possibly can to provide access for people who are interested in our field to be able to come into our field. Again, offering a competitive wage. I think relying on populations that that are entering our field because it's one of their few choices, I think is still something that we need to address and ensure that we're offering a livable wage to all populations coming into our field while we're also offering those opportunities. In terms of federal policies to address immigration, I know that there's a number of different options on the table, but to your point, Teen, we're in a really interesting Congress this session, and bipartisan efforts are really what we're hoping to achieve. And so if there is a particular bill or something that we can offer, I would love to connect back with you all to gain that support, but nothing I have specific for today.
Sure. And I just think that there is an alignment with the nursing home industry, all of us. I mean, we really could do something with as power in numbers. And I think there is an effort there, and I think something just to talk about. But great. Well, let's Marco, one of the things that struck me when you talked about you are multi-state. I know between, I think Bangor, you're in 3 states, we're in 2 states, but you're 15 states. How does this work? I mean, I know the secret sauce because I bought into it a long time ago in my 20s, and I love it. But how do you actually, how do you actually share those strategies across multi-states? Because as you said, everything is local. Curious.
Yeah, so we're in 13 states. I think some of the tools that we have put in the toolboxes of folks in terms of engagement, or even maybe from an LED, learning and development perspective, we use technology, right? So we have an LMS system, learning management system, that folks are able to access training. We have coordinated resources out of Philadelphia, but have positions across the country as well that focus on recruiting. So, we will place resources within regions that we feel are most critical, not just having resources, administrative resources in Philadelphia. We also have an organizational structure that is, depending on who you talk to, some of our staff will tell you it's top heavy and not flat enough. But we have an organizational structure that is, I would share with you, that is flatter, that allows leadership and the support of our staff to be as local as possible. Whether that is local in terms of on the ground supporting our programs, or local in terms of being in the states that we're operating in.
And Tony, loved your book a couple of years, I think it was before the pandemic, where you really talked about the transformation and your experience. So maybe share some highlights from some of the leadership perspective, because it's kind of nice to see you. I've known you for a while now, the progression, how you're actually building some of the things you talked about in the book into also what you're doing now. So just want to touch on that. And if you haven't, anybody who hasn't read, it's a fantastic book. I think you can get it on Amazon too. So I want to certainly promote that.
And I look forward to reading your book too, Teen. And you did one thing better than me, is you did not release your book right before the pandemic. So I know you'll do better.
Anyway, it is good that it's still relevant on many levels, but I would tell you that there's probably 3 leadership lessons that I highlight in the book. And the first and foremost is no margin, no mission, right? We got to run this like a business. And, everybody's talking about it. We wish we could pay more, and you can't, because you would be out of business. So really that whole concept of no margin, no mission, I think is a key thing through nonprofits. A lot of people in nonprofits don't think you have to make money, and, people just give you money, and that's far from the truth, as we all know. Second one, I think, is the importance of having the right board members. And I'll pause for a minute when you think about your board members, right? But I'm a big believer that your board is either part of your success, the reason you're successful, or the reason you're really struggling is they're not doing their role. And I talk to a lot of boards about, this isn't just something to do in your free time and just to keep busy. you are responsible for really an important organization, and just how critical it is that you have the right board members and then they know what their role is. And then finally, the importance of courageous leadership team. And again, just listening to everybody speak today, we got to make tough decisions, right? You can't do things that you want to do. We can't do everything. And I really think courageous leadership is critical as we have to navigate some of these really difficult decisions. And, I always say, and I have this with the theme of the book, is if you can really keep the sustainability of the organization and as part of every one of your decisions, you're doing the right thing for your mission. So I would say those are my 3 big points. And don't release it before a pandemic.
And I think that the whole, I would say, I think the tone of your book was sort of too, I think it's too important to fail, but if not us, then who, right? I think that's the core, I think you'll see of all of us here and that are talking about these issues is that I can say that there's lots of folks in the private sector that talk about this too, but there's a mission here that there's a core through, I think, the conversation today and around the workforce. Aaron, talk a little bit about how the career ladders work and, that you and the team has developed, throughout sort of the affiliate structure, both in Pennsylvania and New Jersey, and how that works.
Yeah, so similar to what Tony said, we developed career ladders for a lot of different positions, so that a DSP could see themselves becoming a nurse, and then, maybe they start as an LPN and maybe they end as like a, nurse practitioner, right? So what are the steps along the way? What education do you need? We have the teacher career path, or education in general, not just teachers, the nurses, the management ones. We have one specific to case management, and ones for clinical, behavioral health professionals. And the way that we use them is through discussion, to be honest with you. What is this person's interest and what's realistic for them? Because we never want somebody getting into a situation where I really want to be a nurse practitioner, but I don't like to see blood or something, So really having some good conversations with people around what's important to you, where do you want to be? And like I said, we have this position where we have 2 people in positions whose job it is to meet with people, discuss with them, where do you want to be and how do we get you there? Where are you right now? And Woods offers so much support. And we've partnered with so many, so I saw somebody in the chat was asking about like reimbursement and stuff like that. We have a community grant where we can, essentially help people to pay for their Harcum degree. Besides just from Woods, we get money from this community grant program. Part of that is they give it to us to help people further their education, which means we get, if somebody has $1,000 in student loans, through CCP that now is tying up their transcript so they can't get enrolled, we can use that $1,000 to get that person's transcript off hold. So, these career paths, it goes beyond just what do you want to be when you grow up. It's also, what's realistic. And a lot of people do come in and say, I don't know, I'm looking at these, I don't know what I want to do. So it's the deeper conversations. It's true career counseling, to be honest. It's beyond just the career paths. But they provide like a little, it's a conversation starter more than anything.
And I would say, we get the question often, how do you pay for it, et cetera. And I think, and I think Tony has also done that. The biggest place you can find funding in your organization is on your benefits, and not necessarily, I would say, have less benefits for your staff, but pushing some of your partners, whether it's your health insurance provider, et cetera. I know Tony has done the same as us, which is going with a different kind of health plan to free up some dollars to invest in staff. And I think that, or I always say to our sector, it's great we have Lydia and folks really advocating for us, et cetera. We can also do a little bit ourselves to figure out how to get funding out of our budgets, et cetera. But it's still not going to be enough. I just wanted to comment on a few things on the chat. I think that Susan is asking about what can parent and advocates do. I think a strategy from family members, and I go that also to on the nursing home side, is critical for this and organizing our families. And hate to say it, Lydia, I think perhaps as congressional members on both sides, they see their families not being able to get care, and something sadly or dramatic happens. Maybe that will open their eyes to the fact that we truly need help and need them to get over themselves in terms of comes to immigration. So I'm hoping at least for that. So Susan and all parents, I know there's some parents on here, you can do a lot, and we need you. And I think the organized policy strategy that the Lydias of the world pushes as something we can engage you in. In terms of data, I'm right with Mark, is that there's a lot of survey data in terms of determining rates, et cetera. It's never adequate. And it's always with, I say, some sort of, I would say, an agenda that doesn't always support us. The devil's in the detail. Lydia, you said it. You got to know everything. You got to understand that from your state perspective. And reading some of the 1115 waivers, which is how, home and community-based waivers get supported. It's a huge chunk. It's a big document, and it's very wonky and very, I would say, legal. So some of that stuff is hard to understand even in those kind of waivers, but it's something we need to do. And I would say, in terms of other things I'm seeing there, Dan, you're talking about reimbursement in terms of there, again, educational benefits. There are grant programs out there, and I do know that there are in New Jersey just passed, I think a new program, which I think is going to be important, but more on the clinical side, where they're incentivizing, prescribers on the psych mental health side and others to actually work in and get, loan repayment. So I think there are things we can do at the state level, to support a workforce, to incentivize a workforce to work in our sectors. I myself have for many years benefited from having AmeriCorps, Vista workers, et cetera, that actually were incentivized to work in underserved communities or abroad, and had also sort of the payment for tuition and also for loan repayment. So there are things we can do, and I think there are creative programs that we can push for that perhaps will incentivize people to work in our sector. So one final, before we end, I just want to say maybe some final words for each of the panelists. So Lydia, any final words for us before we end? I want to be mindful of the time. We said 5 o'clock. So any final words of wisdom from you?
I would just urge everyone to stay connected to your communities, that we're all in this together. We're all working as hard as we can to find those solutions. If you really want to get involved, but you have this 200-page document that's really legalese and doesn't have a lot of plain language, like, I love that stuff. Just send me an email.
That's a lawyer in the call.
Find your wonky friends. They'll be reading it for bedtime material. So, stay connected, find your strengths, and rely on each other.
Thank you. Erin?
Yeah, I just want, through the entire transformation process and our engagement strategy, like what we find over and over again is just that people don't just want to work somewhere that feels like it has value. They want to be valued. And I think our employees are genuinely feeling that through all of the I hate to call them initiatives, but all of the great things that we're doing and that are constantly on the horizon. It feels, we hear constantly, people leave because they think the grass is greener. And in every single orientation, we have people returning to Woods. And what we hear over and over and over again was, I thought I'd be making more money, but in the long run, I really wasn't, or I really didn't. I felt like I just wasn't important at this other provider, but I really do feel like Woods cares about me. So I think people connect with that feeling.
And Marco?
Clearly, there's no magic wand to make it all happen in a way that we would love to see it happen. And it's going to take a lot of little things, a lot of significant things, important things that many of us have shared today to have an impact, and culture being extremely important within that toolbox.
And Tony?
And I'll just sum up kind of what everybody said, and really is that we can't do this alone. And I think that it's great that so many people tuned in just to hear what other people are doing, because I think we all learn that way. And I did as well, so I appreciated all that. And I think that there are some things that we can really do together, and we should do together, because we have a louder voice. And I love keep getting the families involved with us, because I think their voice is even louder than ours. So I look forward to continuing the conversation and working together.
Love it. Well, thank you guys. Thank you. Give our panelists a round of applause. We appreciate you guys. And Nikolai on the side have said, if you want to join us next week, we have the Social Innovations Awards in New Jersey. You can see it there. We'll also send it out to everybody afterwards. We'll make sure you have the links to the various books. And then don't forget to join us for the next 2 symposiums. And the next one will be on integrated and complex care for special populations. Also, the colleagues here all, take care of special populations. And the last one is strategies for avoiding the cliff at 21. So, stay tuned. We appreciate all of you tuning in. Have a wonderful time, and we'll see you guys hopefully next time. So thank you.
Thank you.